right.
So yeah, we can take action.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Do you guys see the minutes up on the screen?
No.
Hmm.
There they are.
Yes.
It just took a while. Hopefully that won't be an issue. I'm using my phone as a hotspot for the internet connection.
I had to do that a couple weeks ago for something because my internet at my house was awful. It actually worked really well.
Yeah, for the most part it does. Dia just had one suggestion when I sent out the minutes via email, and I've made that change in the document you see in front of you, but it was not in the document that went out. She suggested that under Mark Rose's name under attendees that I notate that he was the outgoing chair. So that was a quick change, and she didn't have any other suggestions. What about the rest of you?
It looked fine to me.
I will move to approve the minutes with the change that Beth described.
Do we have a second?
Can I second things as the technical chair?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Well, then I'll second that motion.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing no opposed and seeing at least a couple thumbs up, I'll consider that approved, and we can move on to the next theoretical agenda item.
Okay. So I had committee reports down because we typically do that. So I'll just give a brief overview of the cataloging committee because they were the only ones that met since the last council meeting. They met on August 2nd. The topics discussed were on the new searching group called Sage Adult Materials. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Sage-wide searches that are at the top of the Sage library list that allows you to search materials across Sage, but narrowed down to a specific audience. So anyway, we added Sage Adult Materials. We already had Sage Juvenile and Juvenile Easy and trying to think, large print, I think. So anyway, that was something that we demonstrated. We also covered the new MARC templates, which have RDA tags in them and a 599 that says original record needs a review. And we review those records especially for Cat 2 catalogers. We also talked about free-floating subdivisions and how to look them up. And the next meeting is October 4.
What is a free-floating subdivision?
That is a part of the subject entry that can be added to other subjects. Trying to think of a good example. If I had the minutes up in front of me, I could.
Yeah.
Like fiction. No, that's a form, but it's still free floating. So it's just things that can be combined with other subjects and won't necessarily have an authority record for the whole combination, but the individual pieces are authorized. And so that's kind of what we were talking about. Yeah, that recording is available for anybody. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, they usually go at the end of the subdivision, at the end of the subject heading.
Yeah.
There'll be things like, I pulled up the document, so right now I'm in A's, but like history and sources or abbreviations. it's basically further delineates the subject heading so that it's more specific, but it's a clarification that can be used on basically any subject heading. So rather than the subject heading master list having, okay, you can use popular works at the end of this particular subject heading, they call it free floating because you can use it basically anywhere.
Okay.
It's usually a subfield X or a subfield V.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
And those recordings are available for anybody to watch anytime. The recordings of the cataloging committee, they're up on YouTube. So if you want to catch that, you can. Circulation.
Yeah, Celine sits right on the other side of my cubicle wall, and I always just ask her what happened.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
I'm sure she gets tired of it, but
I doubt it. Circulation committee did not meet, but I think it's important that they do meet. So I'm going to contact Kathy and see if she's willing to continue being chair. If not, we might have to find a new chair for that committee. I know one of the things we wanted to talk about was upping the $5 limit. If you've got other ideas, and I'll send out an email, or Kathy will. Any other things that you want the circulation committee to cover, please let us know. Trying to think. So, unless there's other committee reports or questions about committees, I guess we haven't had a courier committee lately either, which might be a good idea. I've got some courier document changes to make and post, so I'll be doing that either this week or the beginning of next week, just to cover some changes that we've had in the courier recently. And trying to think of anything else. Any questions?
I haven't had any staff comments about the change with us being the drop site for Ontario and Malheur County. Must be going well.
Good. Good. We recently had a little bit of a change in the Umatilla Special Library District, Ione, and Oregon Trail because we dropped the BMCC drop site. They were doing all the external labeling of XPAC bound materials. And now each of the individual libraries is doing the labeling. So we're kind of working out the kinks with probably 15 libraries sharing the same XPAC login for doing courier labels. So that's been a little tricky, but people have come up with good suggestions on how to handle it. So we're working through those kinks. So
it allows concurrent logins.
It does allow concurrent logins. What we found was that because you could be logged in at the same time, the print queue could get kind of confusing because people would be generating labels and they're not your labels, so you don't want to print them. So we had to use the comment field to indicate which library was producing the label so that you could identify your labels for printing and not print somebody else's labels. We talked about, having designated times for specific libraries to log in and produce their labels, but we haven't. That gets just logistically more difficult, and so we haven't gone to that yet. We're going to see how this other method works. So just let us know if you're experiencing any issues with the labeling as we work out these kinks. It's worth it though, just to be able to keep things flowing similar to the way they were through the ESD. And the ESD doesn't have the capacity, equipment or staff to to do the labeling for all of these libraries. So that's why the individual libraries are doing the labeling. So that's just a brief update on what's happening on the courier end. Are we ready for the systems update?
Let me just run down some financial activity stuff real quick.
Oh, sure.
I put 2 links in the chat. There's hasn't been any activity really that was noted on the September one. So the August one does show really what's happened so far. And that's really just been a couple of payments in courier. We always pay the Orbis Cascade bill up front. So that's $52,000. And then there was a payment for Marchive for tech services for about $5,300. And that's really it besides payroll.
Yeah, and
I don't think billings have gone out yet for
No.
for libraries.
But they're going out soon. I made a note on my things to cover today was that I was going to be starting to generate those bills and send them out. We usually do it in September because of the schools being back. So that'll be on my agenda this week to create those bills and send out so we can get money coming back in.
That's it for financial reports.
All right. John, you want to talk about
Sure.
tech stuff? Give Beth a
Okay.
break for a minute.
Yeah, of course. So we're now, week 3 in the new server situation. We haven't figured out any of the issues that we've had. So Easy Proxy's been migrated. The SIP issues were resolved, and actually I was able to identify a bunch of old SIP accounts that didn't need to be present anymore. We did run into a hiccup yesterday where EOU had made a change to the firewall and I got locked out. So that's been fixed. And so now we have the 2 new database servers are up. We have 2 log servers, one that acts as a failover in case one goes down. The NAS is now on the new network. We have a Nagios server just for monitoring. The logs, actually sorry, I'm looking at the network map and that's actually incorrect. So there's 2, we're calling them utility servers that handle the SIP and the Nagios. The log server just handles the reporting. Then we have 2 app servers which handle all the web requests to whenever someone goes to the OPAC. We're going to be replicating those, so we'll have a total of 4 virtual machines that handle all those requests. The new network is on 10 gigabit connections rather than 1 gigabit connections between servers. So we should see a much faster response time with requests than we've had in the past.
I did get some good feedback from Vail Public Library saying that whatever we did with the system upgrade, things are moving a lot faster for them. They used to have to wait
Good.
30 seconds after checking a book in to, so anyway, it was a positive report.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the way the new network is set up is that it's on its own completely separate network. Everything goes through, we now have 2 load balancers. So if the first one fails, everything can go through the second to access the subnet. So everything is sandboxed so that nobody can get into any of the servers. That we don't know that that was happening with the old network, but there were openings because that network was shared with other EOU devices. So now that we have our completely own subdomain subnetwork, whatever you want to call it. It allows us to be much more secure. That's actually what happened yesterday is Tim was locking things down and accidentally locked me out in the process. But so we're also going to be adding the, let me take a step back. Okay, so we've turned off all of the servers on the old network. We haven't deleted anything yet, but the next step is to take the old servers and assign them their new roles. So that's, Beth and I will probably talk about that to solidify exactly what those roles are going to be, but more than likely, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, for sure, one of them is going to be a test server so
Yes.
that we can put the latest version of Evergreen up on it and play around with it before we actually upgrade. Whether we get an opportunity to do that before this next upgrade, John and I will have to talk about that.
Right.
But for sure, in the future, that's going to be our goal, is to update that continually with the latest version of Evergreen, so that we can always be looking to the future and getting better prepared.
Yes, and that way we can do training on it and things of that nature. So yeah, one of the old servers is going to do that, and then there was some debate as to whether or not the other decent old server was going to be used as a redundant backup for the database.
We already have one backup for the database, deciding
correct.
whether we need two, or whether we want to use the server for another purpose.
Right.
You know, John, we might look at, well, future discussion. I'm just thinking we might use it as a web server for, instead of putting all of our videos on YouTube, using one of the servers as a web server.
That's a possibility.
And storing all of our stuff locally so that we have a little more control over it.
Right. And let's see. Other than that, the next steps are to basically, sorry, we still need to get the NAS completely converted over. It has a connection on both. So Tim and I were going to work on that. And then we actually talked this morning about the email issue that has been kind of a thorn in our side with how Evergreen spoofs addresses. So we came up with a solution of creating what's called an SPF record that goes on, goes in the DNS record of an individual domain. So like, for example, one of the libraries we were looking at was Pendleton. So it's all run through the city of Pendleton. When you look at the DNS record, it has an SPF that says, you know, allow emails from, and then it lists either an IP address or a domain name. So in their case, it's the city of Pendleton. If we added Evergreen had them add that to their SPF record, it would automatically accept emails from Evergreen. So the other solution for those that, like small libraries that use Gmail accounts, and we've run into this before with other libraries, is to use the evergreen@sagelib.org address as kind of a host. But one thing we can do, and I need to look into it, we just talked about it this morning, was to add inboxes for the SageLib account, for one for each library, so that needs it. So that way email comes from Evergreen as that SageLib account and then automatically gets forwarded to the correct real address. So that way we're not dealing with the problem of the spoofing of how Evergreen spoofs addresses, because most email hosts are cutting down on how that gets through their email servers, because that's how some spam gets generated. So as far as the email hosts are considered, the evergreen messages look like spam. So in order to get around that so that it actually goes through as correctly to the patrons as notices, that might be a workaround. Did that make any sense at all to anybody?
Yep, that was very
Okay.
well explained.
Okay. So, so I'll be looking into that, and then I think that is everything at the moment. Still waiting on. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that John created a new ticket today with Equinox for scheduling the upgrade, the Evergreen
Yes.
software upgrade. We were waiting on some other things from Equinox to finish up the last project, and we decided we can go ahead and proceed with scheduling the upgrade, and if those other things happen, great, but they don't have to happen before we do the upgrade, and we just want to get it scheduled and start working towards preparing libraries for the upgrade, because it's kind of been in limbo for a while. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's the update on the Evergreen upgrade.
Yeah, and the only thing that's really in process that from the old migration that hasn't been completed on the Equinox side is they wanted to customize how Nagios was set up. So that Nagios is my monitoring tool, so I can see the status of all the servers. So, you know, if I can see at a glance if reporter's down or the find, you know, module or something else, you know. So like yesterday when things were starting to act slow, I would have been able to just pull that up and say, oh, okay, you know, the app server 1 is, you know,
Got a stuck
high
job
CPU
on it or
usage.
something. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm currently limited on what I can see without having to go into each individual server. So I know he'll get that done soon. I'm not that worried about it, but it's an extra step. So I just thought you should be aware of that.
So what is the timeline for the upgrade, do you think? Is it 2 months out, 3 months out?
I haven't gotten a response yet, but the way my feeling is that we're probably 2 months out. Does that basically feel the same to you, Beth?
Yes, I think that's probably going to be what they're saying is 2 months. Yeah.
Do we know what version we're going to go with?
My understanding would be 3.7.
Yeah. So when I cover the new features, I'll be looking at all of the updates between what we currently have at 3.4, covering all of the things that have been added in each of 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7. They're currently working on the beta for 3.8. So 3.7 has been out for a little while.
And I saw that he was posting cataloging fixes, so he's probably been pulled in that direction.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hoping we get a response to our ticket either today or tomorrow. That will give us some possible date choices, and we can send out an email to the listserv, get some feedback, get that date scheduled, and then I will start scheduling trainings.
Cool.
Yeah. The only other thing I can think of, which I think I mentioned last time, is that the way the new system is configured is it automatically outputs all of the log files and everything else directly to the NAS rather than to like the log server, which is what caused that crash. So we've planned ahead. Everything that has happened with the old system, we've planned to eliminate those particular issues going forward. So,
And one of the issues I had with backup files being stored on the log server and a lack of space was when I did major updates to the database and had lots of transactions. Those would pile up and actually start causing problems with running out of space. So it gives me the ability to do more things on a larger scale as well. So there's additional benefits behind the scenes as well.
yeah, I think that's everything. If you have any questions, just ask.
I did see some discussion on the Evergreen roadmap sites about a new version of the catalog, but I didn't
Yes.
see any. The link to that was dead, so I was wondering what that development is.
They have redone the structure of the OPAC and the way that pages are fed. So it's going to be a lot of work on my end to figure out what changes we need to make on our end to fit in with that new structure. My understanding was that with 3.7, although that new structure was available, it was optional.
I believe so.
So I'll be looking into that if we're definitely going to move forward with 3.7. I've got to look at the pros and cons of what the new OPAC is like and see, is it just better for us to move to that new OPAC view and then get together and make the changes that we want based upon the new structure rather than trying to hobble the old, convert the old structure into the new structure. So I'm going to be taking a look at that as well. But you're right, Perry. Just with all the other upgrades to the software in Evergreen to convert it to a new language, they've also changed the way the OPAC is done. And so got a little bit of a learning curve, but hopefully there's enough documentation out there to help me.
Cool. Well, that was a lot. So, yay. New software and new computers.
Yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
Christmas for nerds.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as there's no wrinkles, we're happy with new software, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that reminds me. Because we are turning off everything on the old network today, at least that's the plan. If anything weird happens, please let me know, just in case there's some weird little something that we forgot that is hanging out on the old network. Please let me know so that we can identify it and get it taken care of right away. And I'll send out an email as well.
Okay. Sounds good.
I mean,
Just an update from our last meeting. I was supposed to create a spreadsheet of notice text. I'm still working on that. Had a lot of other projects come up, especially with schools starting back up and needing new students brought in and changes to the student databases. That kind of took some of my time. But I will be getting that out to everybody to look at in the next day or two.
okay. And did we have any news or updates on the new officers and council positions? I think you guys were talking about that when I logged in, but
yeah. So Mary Reeser has agreed to be on the council again. So we've got that position covered once the vote takes place. I'm assuming the vote will be affirmative. So we're the only positions we're lacking is that second school position, which we have actually gone a couple years without having, but it'd be nice if we had it. And then also the 5,000 to 15,000 category. I approached Amy at Lakeview about serving on the council, and she was willing, but she's also taken a Leo position, so she wasn't sure whether she could do both. But if we don't find somebody, she's willing to take that on. So I've approached Cheryl as well. So we'll see if I can get that last public library position filled, and I'll also be contacting some schools. So
Cheryl from Hardy County.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, there's not as many libraries in that category, so there's kind of more of a limited set of people to choose from. And Grant County has a new director, Chris, who was there as the assistant, has now taken the directorship, but I thought it's just, there's too much new for her to be able to take a role on the council quite yet.
Okay.
So any other questions, any other things that you want John and I to address, other than the software upgrade and system changes? Things you want us to focus on in the next month and a half?
Is there a way to tie barcodes to home libraries in the system
Yeah.
somehow?
Yeah, the barcode prefix.
Well, I mean, is there a way to force it to require the correct barcode prefix in a card?
No.
We changed to in-town versus out-of-town patrons with charges for out-of-town patrons here in LeGrand now.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of local library patrons who suddenly found themselves as out-of-town patrons and didn't want to pay for it have been getting cards in other libraries in the area, and they've been keeping their cards here. The libraries at the other end have been allowing them to keep their LeGrand cards. And I'm assuming that if you have a LeGrand card that's on an active unblocked card, as far as the SIP stuff is concerned, that will give you access to all those things that we do, like Canopy and Hoopla. And
yeah, it would.
part of having the resident versus non-resident thing is that if you want to have access to Hoopla, you need to pay for a membership.
I get
but if
that.
you go to Union and get your account changed over and they say, oh, you can just keep that card, then you've got a card in the system with the correct barcode that lets you access Hoopla even though you're not paying for it.
Okay, so you need to communicate with those other libraries, and those accounts need to be,
Yeah,
I mean,
we have been, and we've been blocking people's cards when we find things like that and contacting the libraries. But
we can always pull a list of patrons. Technically, those cards shouldn't have been LeGrand cards in the first place. They should have been Union cards or Elgin Public cards, or because that's where they resided.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So now we're just backpedaling. But if I can help you with reports to kind of identify those, because we could create a list of LeGrand patrons and sort by barcode and easily group all of those and make an up.
I think Carrie's figured it out. She's been pulling reports and going through lists, and she's found a few dozen. I was just curious if there was a way to enforce that sort of a change in the system somehow.
Not currently, and it's not something that you would necessarily. I mean, there may be occasions when you want that freedom, and so blocking it for everybody else, I think handling it with reports and just altering the patron records is a better way to go.
Okay.
And
Just
all
a
libraries
curiosity.
need to follow the SAGE policy of not creating duplicate public
Yeah.
library accounts.
Well, they're deleting the old accounts. They're just allowing them to keep the card / barcode from us because we have the plastic cards that are nice and last a long time and can go through your washing machine without being destroyed.
So they're on like they're
Like it'll be a Union account, but with a Legrand card and barcode because
okay.
Union just
Gotcha.
let them keep it, or whoever just let them keep it.
Okay.
So
So yeah, so if they have multiple barcodes underneath their account, say it's a Union Public card and the home library is Union. I don't think that it would work with Hoopla though. I think the home library would have to be Legrand.
does it look at that when it's doing that sort of stuff, or does it? I thought it just looked at the barcode number
It depends.
and whether the account was
It
active.
depends. It depends on how your service was set up with your vendor, because obviously, Union Public folks haven't been able to access Hoopla in the past. So I'm thinking home library's got to be in there. But one of the things I was indicating, you can bring up all the barcodes that are associated with that account, and you can
Mhm.
mark it inactive, so that it can't be used for access, I guess is what I was getting at.
Okay. Well, and that's what we've been manually doing. It's just there were a few of them.
Yeah.
And the ones who are transferring over typically don't have another barcode assigned. They were just changed over to a Union account or an Elgin account or a whatever account,
But they should
and
have
no
been.
new barcode or anything.
Oh, really?
So is what it sounds like was going on. Yeah.
Oh, that's a procedural thing that we have to address with those other libraries then. Yeah.
The price of printing cards has come really far down. I think they're only like 20 some cents now from some vendors. So not an excuse not to have their own cards.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes. And I thought most of them had plenty. So,
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying the libraries are doing it of their own free will. It might be that the patrons are saying, "Can I just keep using this card because I like it and it will last," or something, and maybe they don't see a problem with that or something, and they don't know that it will potentially allow people access to things that they're not paying to access.
possible.
So I don't know. It was
Okay.
just a curiosity, kind of
Yeah.
a wondering thing about being able to make them change it in the system somehow. But if not, then we'll just keep going through the reports. So, okay. Any other questions from anybody else since we're doing question and answers?
So Kathleen had a note that the attendance spreadsheet shows that she's in Stanfield. Okay. So Perry's fixing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Perry.
Weston.
My hope is that now that we're getting into fall, winter, I'd like to start trainings back up again, not only with the new Evergreen update, but also just trainings on circulation and cataloging, just as refresher courses, but also to help new staff at libraries get more acquainted with the system. So look for emails about that coming out too.
We got 3 new people here in LeGrand, so.
Oh, good.
Well, 2 new people in terms of full-time equivalents, but 3 total.
Yeah, and I think that's the case at a lot of libraries. There's been a lot of changeover. Um, and I think a big need for training. So thinking about trying to do at least one or two a week for a while in both main
Cool.
areas. So I'll start putting that together as well.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm looking at the minutes from last month. There was discussion about sharing the scripts.
Yeah,
And I
that's what I mentioned,
think we still
Perry.
need to do that.
Yes, I was working on the spreadsheet for all of
Okay.
those notice texts and hadn't gotten it done. So
Okay.
I'll be finishing that up and sending that out to folks for review to see, getting feedback if we want to change the Sage ones and, the ones that are library specific, it'll probably give other people ideas. So,
Mhm.
so yes, those will come out soon. I just wasn't quite finished. I have to go in, well, I either have to pull them all from the database or I have to go into each individual one and copy and paste. And so a little bit more time consuming, but I'll get it figured out.
Okay. Everybody got their statistics and their ODLC and all that fun stuff done?
Not done. In progress.
But in the works. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of grins and no.
So
does anybody want to be the council chair? Or other officers that need to be replaced? It's a lot of fun.
I think we still have to get our membership roster finalized, and then we
Okay.
will elect from that.
I'm
All
believing that we'll be able to vote on that next meeting. I'm going to do the vote of on the new council members by email in the next couple of
Okay.
weeks, and then by the next council meeting we'll have at least most of the positions filled, and we'll be able to vote on chair and vice chair.
As long as at least 2/3 of us show up for the meeting.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about? Any other questions, comments, reasons why Evergreen irritates or excites them? There are things I really do miss about Millennium,
Like what,
but
Ryan?
that was a long time ago.
It
Yeah,
was
like
Well,
what?
Like the reporting functionality was super easy to use because
Oh.
it was all just drop downs for everything.
Yeah, it was drop downs, and I could see I need to clean up the reports area, but it was so not powerful. There was a limit to how much info you could get out of the system, and so when we moved to, I do understand it's more complex,
It
but
was much more visually functional.
it's much more broad as far as the data you can get out of the system. So
I went and looked at the instructions for creating a new report the other day for Evergreen, and it is so bizarre.
well, we
But
definitely need
I
a
don't understand
train.
any of the background stuff. So
Well, we need a training on that for sure too. So I'll put that down. But the other thing I was going to do was do a huge cleanup of the report templates, because right now it's just too overwhelming when you go in for choices. And there's a division between reports. They changed the reports module enough that there's some things, older reports, that won't work because the names changed within each of the individual areas. Anyway, I'm going to try to scale all that down and make it a lot more clear as to what your report choices are. So that's on the fall agenda, Ryan. So is that the only thing?
Woo.
Is the reports?
Oh yeah, no, that wasn't even really a complaint. That was just one of the things that I missed about Millennium was how easy it was to do those. So I'm just whining about it for something to whine about it. 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So,
So
unless anybody,
quick reports is probably more like what you're used to.
maybe.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything that isn't just whining about things they don't like about Evergreen? Okay. Well, shall we adjourn the meeting, I guess, then? Less than an hour? Woo.
Sure. We got plenty of things
All
to do, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.